We're starting in the middle of page 147. Make sure you're annotating because we're going to be answering questions at the end. Through the evening, Papa and Uncle Hammer and Big Ma and Mr. Morrison and Mama lent us their memories, acting out their tales with stage-worthy skills, imitating the characters in voice, manner, and action, so well that the listeners held their sides with laughter. It was a good warm time, but as the night deepened and the peanuts in the pan grew shallow, the voices grew hushed, and Mr. Morrison said, "They come down like ghosts that Christmas of '76. Them was hard times like now. My family was living in a shanty town right outside Shreveport. Reconstruction was just about over then, and them northern soldiers was tired of being in the South, and they didn't hardly care about no black folks in Shantytown. And them southern whites, they was tired of the northern soldiers and free Negroes, and they was trying to turn things back around to how they used to be. And the colored folks, well, we was just tired. Weren't hardly no working during them years. I suppose it was just about as hard being free as it was being a slave. That night they come, and I can remember just as good. It was cold. So cold we had to huddle all against each other just trying to keep warm. And two boys about 18 or 19, I reckon, come knocking on my daddy's door. They was scared clean out of their heads with fright. They'd just come back from Shreveport. Some white woman done accused them of molesting her, and they didn't know nowhere to run. So they come up to my daddy's 'cause he had a good head, and he was big, bigger than me. He was strong, too. So strong he could break a man's leg easy as if he was snapping a twig. I seen him do it that night. And the white folks was scared of him. But my daddy didn't hardly have time to finish hearing them boys' story when them devilish nightmen swept down. "Nightmen?" I echoed in a shrill, dry whisper. Stacy, sitting beside me on the floor, stiffened. Christopher John nudged me knowingly. Little man leaned forward on Papa's lap. "David," Mama started. But Papa enfolded her slender hand in his and said quietly, "These are things they need to hear, baby. It's their history." Mama sat back, her hand still in Papa's, her eyes wary. But Mr. Morrison seemed not to notice. "Swept down like locusts," he continued in a faraway voice. "Burst in on us with their rebel sabers, hacking and killing. Burning us out. Didn't care who they killed. We weren't nothing to them. No better than dogs. Killed babies and old women. Didn't matter." He gazed into the fire. "My sisters got killed in they fire, but my mama got me out." His voice faded and he touched the scars on his neck. "She tried to get back into the house to save the girls, but she couldn't. Them nightmen was all over her, and she threw me, just threw me like I was a ball, hard as she could, trying to get me away from them. Then she fought like a wild thing right side my daddy. They was both of them from breeded stock, and they was strong like bulls." "Breeded stock?" I said. "What's that?" "Cassie, don't interrupt Mr. Morrison," said Mama. But Mr. Morrison turned from the fire and explained. "Well, Cassie, during slavery there was some farms that mated folks like animals to produce more slaves. Breeding slaves brought a lot of money for them slave owners, especially after the government said they couldn't bring no more slaves from Africa, and they produced all kind of slaves to sell on the block. And folks with enough money, white men and even free black men, could buy exactly what they wanted. My folks was bred for strength like they folks, and they grandfolks for 'em. Didn't matter none what they thought about the idea, didn't nobody care. But my mama and daddy, they loved each other. And they loved us children, and that Christmas they fought them demons out of hell like avenging angels of the Lord." He turned back toward the fire and grew very quiet. Then he raised his head and looked at us. "They died that night. Them nightmen killed them. Some folks tell me I can't remember what happened that Christmas. I weren't hardly 6 years old, but I remembers all right. I makes myself remember." He grew silent, and no one spoke. Big Ma poked absently at the red-eyed logs with the poker, but no one else stirred. Finally, Mr. Morrison stood, wished us a good night, and left. Uncle Hammer stood also. "Guess I'll turn in too. It's near 1 o'clock. "Wait a while, Hammer," said Big Ma. "Now you and David both home. I gotta talk to y'all about the land." Right, you're done with the reading. Now go ahead and answer your multiple choice questions on the Google form.